Welcome to Let's Talk. The Hong Kong community in the UK is having growing concern about the government's approach towards the China's mega embassy in London, as well as Home Office review on settlement rules. Today we're in Carshalton with Liberal Democrats MP Bobby Dean to ask him about where Britain is heading and what that means for Hong Kongers. Thank you, Bobby, for your time today. Let's start with one of the most pressing issues right now that's concerning a number of Hong Kongers in the UK. That's the China's mega embassy in London. We know that it's delayed and delayed again, and many people actually think that the government isn't delaying it for a decision to be tough, but instead it is delaying to quietly approve it. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the people that say the latter are probably right. I think the government's quite set on approving it, but are just looking for an appropriate moment to do it, and they keep delaying the decision. My suspicion is that they're going to announce some sort of deal with China at some point, and we'll use that as cover for approving the embassy, and therefore ignoring all of the security concerns that people have been raising about it, and giving a huge diplomatic victory to China at a time that they don't deserve it. And I think that probably Prime Minister Keir Starmer thinks it's necessary for building a relationship with China, and so yeah, I do think the decision has already been made internally.
But Keir Starmer also described China as a threat to the national security in the UK as well. Do you think it is just some words that he's playing around with the language, but actually in practice he's playing soft to China?
Yeah, I think actions speak louder than words, and also these words soften and harden at different moments when he's under different types of pressure. So yeah, I don't really believe the Prime Minister until he starts taking firmer action. He should reject the embassy. He should scrap all ministerial visits to China until we get some concessions on China's part. I mean, Jimmy Lai being locked up is a source of national shame, really, and we should be calling it out and refusing to have this positive relationship build with China until they start playing a bit of ball with us.
Do you think the government right now really takes the transnational repression seriously? Because a number of Hong Kongers in the UK also felt quite some pressure, I think.
Again, I think we get words but not actions. I'm absolutely horrified about the latest round of transnational repression we've heard about, the deepfake images being circulated of pro-democracy activists. This is a complete disgrace, and I also think we could put more support in place for those that are being targeted. There should be a dedicated hotline for these people to call. It shouldn't be treated like any other crime where you just sort of report it into your local police station, and that local police station often doesn't really understand the context to that kind of harassment. There should be a dedicated reporting line for those people, and I also think we could, provide them with some of the more prominent activists with the kind of support that I get. I mean, I've got like a SOS fob that I get to carry me at all times, which allows me to alert a security company if I ever felt in danger, and so on. These are simple things that we could do to offer more support to those that are being targeted because of their brave actions.
Have you heard of any cases as such in your constituency?
I get lots of reports, no firm cases in my constituency. There was the strong rumours not so long ago about a reported Chinese police station in Croydon, which you may have covered in your reporting before. It was hard to prove whether that was in existence. I know there's certainly lots of fear in the community about being recorded at different events and so on. Me being a politician and trying to engage with the Hong Kong community to understand their issues, the local issues they're facing, as well as some of these international issues, it gets more difficult because some people don't even want to be seen to be engaging with local politicians. And I know that there have been certain community events where we haven't had the attendance we hoped for because people wondered whether or not they'd be monitored when they're there. And of course, if you go to the larger protests, people want to cover their face because they fear that maybe somebody around there might be watching on the behalf of the Chinese state.
So what you mean is your constituents may not be willing to contact you or to have any connection with you because you are a politician?
Yeah, I do worry about that. I mean, let me be clear, I do get correspondence from Hong Kongers, and I do go door to door and get to speak to people, and I have good engagement with local Hong Kong constituents, but I do worry whether some of them feel like they don't really want to be seen to be close to anything to do with politics because of the potential for their activities to be tracked. So it's not that I would be the person sort of feeding information back, but I think engagement with politics here could be picked up and reported back as this person is politically active in the UK, associating with a politician who has been known to speak out against the Chinese state, for example.
Have you really heard about some complaints like that from your constituents?
Often secondhand. So I have other people who say to me, look, this might be a reason why somebody won't attend the event. If you host this event, can you call this event something else? So rather than come and meet your member of parliament, could you call it like a welcome event for Hong Kongers, or try to depoliticise it so it doesn't feel like a politically connected event? I've been given advice like that, yeah.
What is the most burning issue that you have got from the Hong Kongers in your constituency?
Well, I do get these issues of transnational repression raised with me a lot, and the Chinese mega embassy, I get lots of mail about that. There is one slightly more localised issue that I've been working on for some time, which is about access to employment and recognition of Hong Kong qualifications. There was a trend of me meeting people that were social workers that weren't having their qualifications recognised here in the UK, and I managed to approach the local authority about this, and we got a scheme going where we were trying to support Hong Kongers into getting their qualifications converted into ones that would be recognised by the UK.
Because you're right that there are many professionals from Hong Kong that they are qualified professionals in Hong Kong, but they cannot really convert their profession or their registration from Hong Kong to the UK. Social worker is one of them, but there are also many other professionals.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So what are you doing about that?
Though social worker being the example that we have worked on here in Sutton, but that model could be applied, I think, to almost any profession where there is a discrepancy between the recognition of qualifications. The model would be to essentially work with a local training institution, whether it's a university or a college, on developing a course that could mean that you can convert the Hong Kong qualification into a UK qualification, critically on a shorter timescale than it would be if you was to do it from scratch.
And who is your political hero outside of the UK?
It probably is Barack Obama. He was at that time when I was sort of growing up and getting into politics.
And what matters more in UK politics, humour or patience?
Patience.
What matters more in an MP, empathy or strategy?
Empathy.
Who reacts faster? You standing up to speak in the House, or your dog Chester spotting a squirrel?
Me. He's not actually bothered by squirrels, but if you talk about him answering the door, he barks at that very, very quickly.
And who guards your secrets better, Chester or the Whip's office?
Probably Chester. He doesn't talk English much.
If you could put one message on a billboard for Hong Kongers, what would it say in a few words?
We stand with you.
So maybe let's change a little bit of the focus. And this is more about the BNO settlement and the change of the rule of the game. There are two debates in the Westminster Hall for that. From the proposals to extend the ILR from 5 years to 10 years, and then to change about adding more requirements about the language requirements and also income requirements. So there are a number of BNO families came to the UK under clear and fixed requirements, clear and fixed settlement terms. And right now, do you think that these proposals actually are risking breaching the trust between Hong Kongers and the UK?
I do. I think the goalposts have been moved, and I actually feel quite upset about the way that the government framed their latest announcement, because I had the impression that they were going to be honouring the 5-year pathway for Hong Kongers, because that's what they said at the dispatch box and in their communications. But when you look into the small print, they are still maintaining all of those conditionalities that you've spoken about already, relating to income and language requirements and so on. So although on the face of it, the indefinite leave to remain period hasn't doubled from 5 to 10 automatically, it still can be extended. So the starting point is 5 years, but it can be extended depending on that individual person's circumstance. So I think that is still a breach of the promise that was made to Hong Kongers, and I think we need to rectify that. I actually wrote a letter to the Minister after the announcement, and we got a reply, and they have clarified that is what they mean, that the pathway could be extended from 5 years depending on how people perform the conditions. And it's also important to not to forget the people that have arrived here through other routes as well. So some Hong Kongers didn't come here via the BNO scheme, but via the asylum process. But I think we still owe a similar amount of, respect to them. We need to respect the relationship no matter what route they came in on, and try to make sure that they get settled status as soon as possible.
But as you said that in Parliament, actually a number of MPs has mentioned many terms in the debate, like moving the goalpost, as you mentioned, like we need to uphold the fairness, and also there are some historical commitments that UK should give to Hong Kongers. But do you really think that the Parliament, after the debate, can have any kind of impact? Or is it simply, I'm sorry to say, but it's just symbolic?
No, it's not symbolic. I think we can get victories. I mean, political pressure does add up over time. There are examples and other policy issues where, the government has a huge majority and it can do what it likes, but actually when you see things like the winter fuel allowance and you see things like the 2-child cap, there's other issues relating to carers where the government have backed down over time because of political pressure that's been built by others. The parliamentary arithmetic has not changed, but the decisions have, and that's only because people have been raising their voice time and again and making their constituents' feelings known. I think we have had some victories in relation to the BNO scheme. I mean, they did walk back from doubling that pathway automatically from 5 years to 10. That is now, the starting point is still 5 years. I think we can get them to walk back further and make sure that they strip away this conditionality as well. So we do get wins in Parliament, irregardless of the arithmetic that Labour have got, because political pressure and political campaigning does matter. So yeah, I'm confident we can still get further victories.
But going back a little bit to the BNO settlement route, do you think they can have just have a grandfather clause to protect those who have already migrated to the UK? Does it make sense?
They can do that. That's the sort of concession that the government might want to make themselves, but I'm not going to make it for them. I'm going to go for the maximum, which is just maintain that 5-year pathway as promised for all BNO citizens. I'd also like to see the BNO scheme continue to run to the end of this Parliament and the full welcome packet involved in that as well.
Do you see that it is it a tension between what the UK government is doing right now? That is, on the one hand, there is seems to be the sentiment is to have the approval of the mega embassy, and on the other hand, it is the tightening of the BNO scheme.
Well, I think when we talk about the immigration matters, Hong Kongers are being caught up in a domestic dispute here. I mean, immigration is now on the top issues facing the UK according to polls. And unfortunately, Hong Kongers are suffering amongst this broader debate about how we need to clamp down on immigration. And we're trying to argue that Hong Kong should be treated specially in this conversation because of the historic commitment that we have made. But I don't think that the government necessarily sees those two things as tied. I think Hong Kongers are getting caught up in anti-immigration rhetoric that's happening in the UK more broadly. But you're right to say that the UK government's policy towards China and Hong Kongers is inconsistent. It's not clear, it's not coherent. We were supposed to have a China strategy released earlier this year, but it was less of a strategy and more a series of vague statements. So definitely they do need to tidy that up and get more clear and consistent.
But how?
Well, my personal view is that we can't ignore China, right? They exist in the world. We need to have a relationship with them, but that relationship needs to start from a place of strength. I think China will respect that, and I think we need to be much clearer about what our red lines are. And protection for human rights should always be a red line for the UK. And so we need to go into those negotiations and try and say, we're not going to start talking to you about trade deals and economic relationship until we get these issues resolved, particularly ones relating to British citizenships or people living on our soil.
When you talk about the historical commitment, do you believe that Britain still have a moral responsibility towards Hong Kong to stand up for Hong Kong, or is this era already fading?
No, I think we have a commitment. We have if we don't feel like we have a moral commitment, we do have a legal commitment, because there's the British Sino Declaration in place, and we still have our obligations to fulfil under that. I believe we have a moral commitment, but even if you put in that moral commitment aside, we have clear obligations under international law as well. So there's no way that we could walk back from this or make technical arguments.
When you talk about the legal commitment, what can we do about that? Is there anything that we can move forward because of that such legal commitment?
Well, I guess that one of the worries more broadly at the moment is that international legal order is kind of breaking down, and it's becoming a lot more country-to-country arrangements, not least because of President Trump's dismantling of the global order himself. So I worry about the recourse via legal routes in the international sort of organisations route, but I certainly think that we can maintain that commitment. We want to look like we respect international law to all of our allies, right? It helps us build relationships of trust across the world, and I think sticking to our legal commitments demonstrates that. And I think the government gets this a lot of the time in other areas, and it needs to understand our legal commitments in this area too.
So thank you very much, Bobby, for your time today. Thank you
very much.